This is the beginning of the Mysteries of Pittsburgh by Michael Chabon. At the beginning of the summer, I had lunch with my father, the gangster, who was in town for the weekend to transact some of his vague business. We'd just come to the end of a period of silence and ill will, a year I'd spent in love with and in the same apartment as an odd, fragile girl whom he loathed on sight with a frankness and fury that were not at all like him. But Claire had moved out the month before. Neither my father nor I knew what to do with our new freedom. "I saw Lenny Stern this morning," he said. "He asked after you. You remember your Uncle Lenny." "Sure," I said, and I thought for a second about Uncle Lenny, juggling 3 sandwich halves in the back room of his 5 and dime in the Hill District a million years ago. I was nervous and drank more than I ate. My father carefully dispatched his steak. Then he asked me what my plans were for the summer, and in the flush of some strong emotion or other I said, more or less, "It's the beginning of the summer, and I'm standing in the lobby of a 1,000-story grand hotel, where a bank of elevators a mile long and an endless red row of monkey attendants in gold braid wait to carry me up, up, up through the suites of moguls, of spies, and of starlets, to rush me straight to the Zeppelin mooring at the Art Deco summit, where they keep the huge dirigible of August tied up and bobbing in the high winds. On the way to the shining needle at the top, I will wear a lot of neckties. I will buy 5 or 6 works of genius on 45 RPM, and perhaps too many times I will find myself looking at the snapped spine of a lemon wedge at the bottom of a drink." I said, "I anticipate a coming season of dilated time and of women all in disarray." My father told me that I was overwrought, and that Claire had had an unfortunate influence on my speech, but something in his face said that he understood. That night he flew back to Washington, and the next day, for the first time in years, I looked in the newspaper for some lurid record of the effect of his visit, but of course there was none. He wasn't that kind of gangster. I first read The Mysteries of Pittsburgh when I was in high school, actually, before I came to Pitt or had even really heard of Pitt, and it blew my mind. I was at the public library and I found this book that was written unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Because the language that Michael Chabon uses isn't simple exactly. He's a huge fan of embellishment, but it's so careful. He's very economical with his descriptions. And a line like the closing line of the section I read, "He wasn't that kind of gangster," I love that because it's funny and it's sad, and it's also so clean. So that was my inspiration, I think, going forward after that moment. I didn't want to write Michael Chabon stories, but I wanted to write with that kind of attention to detail, that kind of precision, because I loved it so much in that book. And I think it mattered also that I read it pretty early on, when I was 15 or 16, because that guided my choices of reading after that. Having read The Mysteries of Pittsburgh in high school guided what I chose to read afterwards, and I ended up finding authors that I wouldn't have otherwise. So when I was applying to colleges and I realized that Michael Chabon had gone through Pittsburgh, I thought, what better place to be? Surely there's something in that neighborhood that I need to find, because I loved it in the book so much. I grew up about 2 hours south of here, in West Virginia, and to that point in high school I never read anything about Pittsburgh, a novel that was about people roughly my own age. And that opened a lot of possibilities for me, because literature I'd always known was important, but I hadn't known it could be about that kind of life, the kind of life that I wanted to lead. So I read a lot of Michael Chabon after that. And the thing is that he doesn't really have any books that are like any of his other books. I think Wonder Boys comes the closest, that's also set here. But he's also got an Alaskan police procedural, he has a comic book epic, he has, medieval fantasy, and that kind of inventiveness was my permission. I could write about Pittsburgh, I could write about West Virginia, but I could also write about whatever I felt was important, and that was huge. I'm a little bit different from a lot of the people in my cohort because I did undergraduate at Pitt too. And the reasons I chose Pitt for undergraduate are pretty different from the reasons I chose to stay. I chose Pitt because I loved Pittsburgh. It was always the city where the books were when I was growing up. But by the time it was time to make a decision about my MFA, I'd come to love Pitt's English department so much. they'd helped me and still help me with this one very particular problem that I have, which is that I often edit myself before I'm finished writing. And when I was applying to the MFA, I began working with Bill Lychek, who I would go on to work with in my graduate career, actually. And he gave me advice that I've never quite forgotten, which is that I was writing great stuff, but I needed to let go of the lip of the swimming pool. And that was, I think, the first time I'd been told that. Because in high school and in undergrad to a certain degree, if you write something carefully and well, then you're going to get a pretty good grade on it. But the kind of fiction he wanted me to write, and the kind that Angie Cruz and Rita Rain have wanted me to write, isn't careful. It's wild, actually. And Pitt has been a safe space in the best way possible to write the kind of wild and adventurous stuff that I had been afraid of doing when I was in high school. Actually, my thesis came out of that kind of risk-taking, because it's very much about my own experience growing up in West Virginia. And before I was in graduate school, that seemed too risky almost. I wanted to keep my cards closer to my chest. And when Bill told me that I was at the edge of the pool, but I could swim to the center, that was permission too. And I never wanted to write something that wouldn't move me. And you can't be careful if you do that. So I say Pitt was a safe space, but what I mean is it was a safe space to be as wild as possible, and that is no small thing. This is from a short story called How We Go Under. That was the summer we spent lovesick, drinking screwdrivers in the kitchen at 2 in the afternoon, our hands shaking by dark. We were college roommates, and then just roommates, and then something else. Our dishwasher was stocked full of the coffee mugs we used for our liquor, the handles chipped by July. We cut our thumbs and bandaged them and kept drinking. We were formerly most likely to succeed, formerly homecoming queens, girls once guaranteed to melt even the strictest mother's heart, girls who kept their K-12 report cards in plastic binders. We came home by curfew, parallel parked, didn't go too far because nice girls don't. Our fathers held us by the shoulders on graduation night and said they were proud, so proud, their shirt sleeves blooming dark with sweat, and we let them struggle for different words. In Morgantown we had an apartment by the river, dark and full of soft water sounds, and we slept in every morning until 11. We didn't call our parents or remember to take out the trash. When we were still undergraduates, we stacked our dishes in the sink until we were forced to drink cereal from shot glasses. But we were older now, 22, eager to take up the entire world in our thin arms. This was a test. This was a reckoning, an adventure. We stuck bills to the refrigerator with magnets, hoped desperately to remember. We were 5'7" in bare feet, and we were always in bare feet. The kitchen floor grew sticky under our toes. We leaned against kitchen cabinets to talk, swung skinny hips against silverware drawers and dishwasher doors. Sometimes our hands grazed, and other times we sat laughing on the floor, someone's arms around someone's waist, always joking, always a joke. We took photos in the living room, someone curled on the couch like a model, stretching out her hands toward the camera. Our negatives came back overexposed. That was the summer we slept in the same bed, when we were afraid of the broken lock, and when we were afraid of the dogs outside, and when we felt alone. We woke in the morning with our legs tangled, our hands in each other's hair. We dressed without comment. At lunch we did not mention cold feet, warm breath, soft skin. We ate our soup while it was too hot to taste. We circled job listings in the Dominion Post, held the red pen in our mouths, accidentally stained our teeth with ink like blood. Our applications went unanswered. Our diplomas languished in a closet behind the ironing board, a collection of things we hadn't figured out how to use. We were guaranteed good times, the girls who came to parties at exactly the right moment, who never stumbled in their cheap heels. We knew how to lick the salt from martini glasses. When we were undergraduates, we cultivated a circle of people who believed in our legend. We came as a set. We left as a set. There was no room for anyone else.